Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Hello and welcome to The Print. I have with me today Mr. Jayant Krishna. He's the Group CEO of the UK India Business Council. Welcome to The Print, Mr. Krishna. My first question to you quickly will be, how do you see India and the UK relationship panning out as far as business is concerned in a post-Brexit, in a post-COVID scenario?
I think, if you look at historically, India and UK have had very good ties. There's a lot of commonality in terms of our shared history, our democracies. If you look at the investments cumulatively in the last 2 decades, estimates vary, but anywhere between, 30 to $50 billion worth of FDI has come from UK to India. And a lot of big ticket investments like Vodafone, HSBC, JCB, Diageo, Glaxo, Rolls-Royce, a lot of kind, lot of big time Vedanta investments are there already here. And the UK investments in India actually have created jobs for almost 800,000, 8 lakh people in India. I'm talking about the UK investments in India. So I think it's a very significant thing, and if you look at the Indian diaspora in UK, that's very significant. Be it in IT, be it in NHS, any walk of life that you look at, we may just be about 1.6 million people Indian diaspora in UK, but it accounts for almost close to 2%, 1.9% of the UK's population. And the good thing is, the diaspora directly and the companies by the diaspora in UK, it accounts for almost 6% of the British GDP. So I think and India side also the large marquee investments in the form of Tata Motors, Jaguar Land Rover story we all know, Steel, the Chorus acquisition, Tetley, ONGC has investments, Mahindra Group has, TVS Group has huge investments, in UK. So I think there's a lot of mutuality. If you look at the Indian companies in UK, they account for a revenue of almost $48 billion. And if you add to that the companies by the Indian diaspora, then it becomes almost 85 billion pounds. 48 billion pounds becomes 85 billion pounds, and that's almost 4% of the UK's GDP. And India today has emerged. It used to be the 3rd largest investor in UK. Now it has emerged as the 2nd largest investor here in UK. So I think it's a mutuality. It's there's a lot of discussion about the trade happening. Recently we had a JETCO meeting. So I think historically it's important to understand that we are not starting from a small base. We've had a huge, a critical mass actually in our relationship both ways.
That's right. So coming to that recent meeting, which you just mentioned on the JETCO meeting, and the fact that we have heard our Commerce Minister Bruce Well talking about the fact that India is more keen on a preferential trade agreement with Britain as of now, and going forward probably a larger trade agreement. What is the view of the British firms and companies with regard to this? Are they keenly looking forward to such kind of a PTA?
So whether you call it a preferential trade agreement or an enhanced trade agreement, but all these would eventually, hopefully, one day lead to a free trade agreement, between the two countries. And the idea in the JETCO meeting, which emerged very clearly, is when Mr. Piyush Goyal and Elizabeth Truss, they had a meeting. So the outcome of this JETCO was that they are looking at removing to an extent possible all the non-tariff barriers very fast, and also have discussions, lot of discussions and dialogues on the tariff barrier also, and come close to a signing or a close to closure on these issues. So while we can't do all across, the sectors which have been identified are largely food and drinks. You have ICT, data, digital, these kind of areas, communications and information technology, and of course life sciences and healthcare, which has become hugely important because of the recent pandemic. a lot of Indian doctors work and support NHS. A lot of Indian bulk drugs are actually exported to NHS. You all know that how recently the Oxford vaccine is which will be manufactured by AstraZeneca, and also under a license it will be manufactured by the Serum Institute of India. So I think these are some fantastic. So these three areas, what has been added is chemical is a huge area where there's a interest on both sides. So that's also been added perhaps as the fourth area for discussions on trade. So I think if you look at last financial year, the value of trade between the two countries was almost 24 billion pounds, which is almost $32 billion. And both put together, it grew by almost 9.7 to 10%. India, by the way, has a trade surplus, between the two countries. The surplus is of the order of is more than 8 billion GBP. So India that way has advantage. So I think this agreement would happen, but some of the low-hanging fruits in these sectors that I just talked about are the ones where you'll see some closure happening sooner than later. UK is it's not just that they are negotiating FTA with India alone. I mean, eventual FTA. They're talking to US, they're talking to I think Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and similarly, India has also been saying that let's also await how UK's discussions on trade agreement fructify with the European Union now, since Brexit has happened and that kind of a thing. So I think there are a lot of discussion, especially on the non-tariff side, the visa, the intellectual property protection, ease of doing business, and whole lot of non-tariff issues, are on the radar to be resolved as soon as possible. And as Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as well as the UK Prime Minister, he mentioned, Boris Johnson mentioned very clearly that eventually our eye has to be towards FTA. When it happens, it's very difficult to attach a time horizon. But I think there is a both countries look at FTA as the eventual goal.
Sure. So, Mr. Krishna, if I can ask you in terms of some of the concerns about the sticky areas, as you talked about the tariff and the non-tariff barriers, what are those from the British point of view, in the sense from the British industry point of view, from Indian government and the Indian industry perspective? The worry has been since the Brexit process started is it about single market that Britain will get in the European Union? Is that a probability that is going to happen as the Brexit process comes to an end? Also, there is this case about the retro taxation as far as the Kane Energy and Vodafone is concerned. Does also, is that a concerning factor for the that retro tax is hanging as a cord, and the fact that although Indian government has taken no new cases as far as retro taxation is concerned, but these two cases are still there, especially on the Kane Energy part. How is it that industry is viewing all this?
See, the retrospective tax issue has surely been, an irritant, because any, not just, Cairn or Vodafone, but any investor from UK or elsewhere in the world, when they want to invest in India, they want a certain certainty about, tariffs, about taxes, and so on and so forth, and they do not, and they do not want it to change in between. So, it all, as we know, happened with the Finance Act of 2012, where they said that tax on gain on transfer of shares to a non-Indian entity, would get taxed. It happened during the UPA government, but the late Finance Minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley, has said repeatedly that he's not very happy with the retrospective tax at all. So we have a huge sum of money we're talking about. It all started with Vodafone's $11 billion worth of acquisition of Hutchison. I think in 2007 it was. And Cairn, basically, its acquisition also happened in two phases by Vedanta and another company. So I think if Vodafone itself, including the penalty interest put together, the amount we're talking about is almost 22,000 crores. If you look at Karen, we're talking about an amount of 10,000 to 11,000 crore Indian rupees. It's a huge sum. We are talking about, and this needs to be resolved. But whole thing is now it is both the cases are in the for an international arbitration. So I think Can India's case, all the hearing and everything is over. I think decision should happen, should be announced pretty soon in these summers itself. And if you look at Vodafone, the hearing has to start, and I think so. I think now it's in the international arbitration, but very clearly, I think. As the current government has also admitted time and again that this tax has, perhaps has had an adverse effect on getting more FDI because these two big issues, big companies, retrospective tax issues not getting resolved. But I am very hopeful that, with the international arbitration happening, things will get resolved, and, it will not be as I think it will be an end to a long saga which has been going on, which has not just troubled these two companies, not just the investment from UK, but from elsewhere also. So I think I'm pretty hopeful. I think with because Supreme Court, earlier this year gave an adverse ruling, in the Vodafone case, kind of thing. So I think now I believe the matter is up for international arbitration, and then let's hope what gets resolved there.
But do you think that the Indian government will honor the verdict that the international court will give, and they will not pursue the case further? Because, as you said, the amount is huge, and do you think the government will be ready to forego that amount?
I will not be able to comment on that. I mean, ideally, Indian government should, because when two entities can't resolve something, international arbitration is a normal route which people resort to, kind of thing. I mean, if you really, I'll not be able to answer on behalf of Government of India, but I surely hope that whatever is the the ruling of the international arbitration, would get honored by Government of India, even if it is tantamount to some loss of revenue. The way I see it, loss of revenue is a temporary phenomenon. But if it throws open gates for more investments, in economies which are troubled all over the world because of COVID, I think it will be eventually it will be a win-win, not just for both countries, but India versus all other countries with which it does business with.
As far as Britain's single market access to the European Union is concerned, how is that panning out in the entire Brexit process?
So, I really am not been following up as to what kind of discussions UK has been having with the EU on single market access, and post Brexit, what's going to be the nature of their trade deal with them. So I don't really know, but I believe this will happen. This is there early on the horizon, and it will get resolved somehow. What exactly are the dynamics between UK and European Union? I'll not be able to comment on that.
No worries.
Simultaneously, India is also negotiating. I've been negotiating from 2017 onwards. A trade deal with the EU, kind of a thing. And even in 2017, the EU India summit, this issue came up, and both parties agreed that it has been a non-starter and we need to resolve. So I think hopefully there'll be some development on that front also, kind of thing. But between EU and India, there's if you look at EU's trade with India, it accounts for just about 3% of EU's global trade. Whereas for India, it's EU is very, very important, because India's trade with European Union accounts for almost 11% of India's global trade. So there is there are issues between India and EU. EU wants what I've heard that they want things like environment, labor, these kind of things, government procurement, these to be added to the negotiations. India wants, issues like visa, like data security issues to be resolved so that, greater amount of IT and IT enabled outsourcing can happen from India to European Union. I think, these are kind of open issues which but I see that India's trade deal with UK will happen much faster than India's trade deal with the EU. Given the fact that a lot of work has happened already. And the velocity of closure will be faster with between India and UK when it comes to a trade deal.
Okay, but do you think the trade agreement between India and EU, will that also in a way support or boost the business that India and UK will do? Is that something that will be helpful or not?
So it's a very difficult thing to comment on, because how UK's relationship plays up with EU post Brexit, those things are not very clear. So and the fact is that with as many countries, as many economic blocks, India can have a pact on trade, and as liberal a regime as possible. That's going to be good. But it's very difficult to play, look at the triangle India, EU, and UK, because what kind of arrangement EU and UK will have going forward. It's anybody's guess at this point of time.
Also coming to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's call on this Atmanirbhar Bharat and being self-reliant, while some are looking at it, from the perspective of India being more protectionist, the government has stated that no, this is going to make India more sustainable, integrate it more with the global values. UKIBC's view on this.
So, if you look at, yes, Atmanirbhar Bharat has been announced, but post-announcement, I think time and again, the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, as well as the Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, they have mentioned that, self-reliance does not mean protection. Self-reliance means greater integration with the global economy. And today, the kind of world that we are living in, where the entire, substantive part of the world is a part of the same manufacturing supply chain. It is very important for us to integrate to be able to become self-reliant sometime in future. Because initially, yes, there was some confusion, but I think government has both the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, the Industries and Commerce Minister. Everybody has clarified that it does not mean more exclusion. It means more inclusion, more integration with the global economy, because there is no other way. You can't become self-reliant in today's world in isolation. You have to connect with the world. You have to adopt. You have to embrace technologies. You have to adopt the best-in-breed manufacturing practices. You have to work in more diverse teams. You have to be a part of a globally integrated supply chain. I think that's the only way, because once you are a part of that, you are integrated. Then only you become, you develop expertise, both in the form of skills, processes, technologies, to be able to eventually become self-reliant. That's what I fundamentally believe, And I also think that UK companies could be of great help to India, in its Atmanirbhar ambition,
Mm-hmm. Also, lastly, Mr. Krishna, just to understand the pandemic, the lockdown, and other things in India, how has that impacted firms from UK which are operating in India? Are they looking forward now that the unlock phase has started and the fact that Indian economy is slowly opening up? What are the problems that they had faced, and going forward, what is it that they want for the government to do?
See, if you look at the British companies working in India or Indian companies working in UK, I think the plight that they faced with the pandemic, with the lockdown, with the work from home. Work from home is a good model for services sector, but not so good for manufacturing. Because in manufacturing, the work actually has to happen on the shop floor. So I think, I won't believe that UK or India are at any advantage or disadvantage vis-a-vis all other economies. All the economies which had the shutdown, all the economies which had the lockdown, and and these kind of, it really slowed down. I mean, many of the economies in the world got crippled. But I think India, if you look at, it has bounced back since the time the lockdown was relaxations happened. And I know a lot of people in large sector, in MSME sector, who have said that, they have bounced back already to anywhere between 60% to 80% of their normal production levels, And some in MSME sector have also said that they've bounced back to their pre-COVID levels of production. So I think, yes, that effect is common, be it Indian companies in UK or UK companies in India. But the fact is, all is set to bounce back, and especially in Indian economy, I see there's a lot of resilience, kind of a thing. So they have this propensity to bounce back as if nothing had gone wrong. So I'm sure, and British industry is no different. So I'm sure with this happening, and as number of cases in bigger markets, bigger cities in India like Bombay and Delhi are also declining now. And also in UK also the number of cases have come down very substantially. So I think going forward there's a lot to look forward, in the post-COVID world for both the countries, and also as people are exploring options of relocating their manufacturing supply chains, I'm sure there are a lot of opportunities for India as a country. To look at those opportunities and keep its eyes and ears open, and at a policy level, more incentives, more red carpets to be rolled out, greater ease of doing business. I think Government of India is looking at it, and would also do it increasingly more going forward, to attract those investments for people who are looking at alternate supply chains.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for talking to The Print. Mr. Krishna, please take care.
Thank you. All the best. Bye-bye.